All right, let's dive straight into this explainer. Today, we're breaking down the totally paradigm-shifting financial philosophies of Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad. If you're looking to redefine wealth, stop treating your time for money, and fundamentally rewire how you look at a dollar, you're in the exact right place. We're going to explore the core differences between rich and poor mindsets, uncover the incredibly simple, true definition of assets versus liabilities, and figure out exactly how to finally escape the rat race.
So here's our agenda. First, two fathers, two mindsets. Next, the rat race trap, followed by redefining assets versus liabilities. Then we'll challenge the primary residence myth and finish up with escaping the rat race. Let's get to it. Section 1. Two fathers, two mindsets.
You see, wealth really isn't just about the size of a paycheck. It actually starts with a profound psychological commitment. Kiyosaki illustrates this huge divergence in wealth through two father figures: his highly educated but struggling biological father, the poor dad, and his best friend's father, the rich dad, who never even finished 8th grade but became wildly successful. The stark contrast in their destinies literally came down to daily mental exercises. The poor dad practiced mental laziness. He'd look at something and just say, "I can't afford it." Boom, brain shuts down, conversation over. But the rich dad, he'd ask a question: how can I afford it? One statement completely closes the mind. The other forces your brain to actively look for opportunities and actually build your financial aptitude.
And it all boils down to this: broke is temporary, but poor is eternal. Being broke is really just a momentary mathematical lack of cash. I mean, we all face that at some point, right? But being poor? That's a permanent psychological mindset of deficiency. If you fundamentally believe you'll never be wealthy, well, you simply won't be. Okay, section 2, the rat race trap. To figure out why so many incredibly educated, hardworking people still struggle, we really have to look closely at this self-inflicted cycle. You know the one: getting up, going to work, paying bills, repeat until you die. We have to ask ourselves, are we stuck in this emotional trap? Because it's an engine powered entirely by two very raw emotions: fear and greed. The fear of having no money is what drives you to work so hard. And then greed, that burning desire for status symbols or new toys, instantly consumes the paycheck the moment it hits your bank account, which of course just forces you to work even more. There are really 4 specific fears fueling this whole cycle: the fear of not paying bills, the fear of being fired, the fear of not having enough money, and the terrible fear of having to start all over again. These fears act kind of like a tar baby. They trap individuals in this incredibly powerful illusion that a traditional job equals actual long-term security. Think about it like a donkey dragging a heavy cart, endlessly chasing a dangling carrot. In our world, the employer or the government is the owner, and the illusion of money is that carrot. The donkey is hyper-focused on this short-term fix, just chasing the carrot, while totally ignoring the fact that the owner is the one actually steering the cart and dictating the ultimate destination. So, to break this cycle, Rich Dad did something pretty radical. He hired young Kiyosaki and his friend to dust canned goods for a meager 10 cents an hour. And when they complained, he literally dropped their pay to 0, working for absolutely free, completely removed the carrot. By taking away the paycheck, he sparked what he called the passion and anger formula. He used their immense frustration to force their brains to identify real opportunities to create wealth, rather than just mindlessly reacting out of the fear of missing a paycheck. All right, section 3, assets versus liabilities. Strategic wealth isn't about your gross income. Not at all. It's about what you actually keep. Building that wealth is basically an engineering challenge. Our traditional school system, which is really a relic of the agrarian age, essentially teaches us to build our financial structure on a tiny 6-inch concrete slab. It creates this wobbly, leaning tower of suburbia that just collapses under debt or sudden economic shifts. True wealth requires digging a massive, deep foundation of financial literacy. It's like building the Empire State Building, and the absolute bedrock of that foundation is knowing the real difference between an asset and a liability. Rich Dad bypassed all the complex accounting jargon and just used the KISS principle. Keep it simple, stupid. He defined an asset purely by the directional flow of money. An asset is simply something that puts money in your pocket. That's it, period. On the flip side, a liability is something that takes money out of your pocket.
Now, I know that sounds incredibly basic, but listen, if you cannot distinguish between an asset and a liability, you're going to spend your entire life digging your own financial grave, buying things you mistakenly think are assets that are actually just draining your resources dry.
It's absolutely fascinating when you map out the cash flow directions across different classes. For the middle class, their salary comes in, but then it takes this massive U-turn straight down into liabilities. We're talking large car loans, credit card debt, mortgages, before finally exiting through expenses. They mistakenly buy liabilities thinking they're assets. But look at the rich. Their cash flow originates in the asset column and flows directly into their income column. They totally bypass that traditional job dependency because they have their assets feeding their income directly.
Which perfectly tees up Section 4, the primary residence myth.
Now, we are about to tackle one of the most controversial pieces of financial dogma out there, the one that keeps millions of people trapped. My house is my greatest asset. We hear it literally all the time. But Rich Dad argued the exact opposite. Your primary residence is a liability. Why? Well, going back to our super simple definition, it takes money out of your pocket every single month through property taxes, insurance, maintenance, and utilities. Plus, it compounds the rat race through something called bracket creep. Basically, you earn a bigger salary, so you buy a bigger house, and suddenly your expenses and taxes absolutely skyrocket to match, trapping you even deeper. By tying up all your capital in a high-maintenance home, you suffer 3 massive losses. First, the loss of time, where your other assets could have been compounding. Second, the loss of additional capital, which is now tied up fixing leaky roofs instead of actually producing income. And third, the loss of education. Because you don't have extra capital to invest, you never get the hands-on experience required to become a sophisticated investor. You know, the type of investor who gets access to the absolute best, highest return deals first, leaving only the safe scraps for everybody else.
And let's definitely not forget the invisible traps. That shocking 15% number? That represents the true cost of taxes, including Social Security and Medicare with employer matching. It is a massive chunk of wealth siphoned away before you even see it on payday, practically ensuring that the heavily indebted homeowner, relying solely on a high salary, stays financially trapped on the treadmill.
All right, finally, Section 5, escaping the rat race. So how do we actually break free from the traditional 9-to-5 grind? The goal is incredibly simple. You need to acquire true assets that generate cash flow completely on their own. This is the rich man's income stream. We're talking rental income from real estate, dividends from stocks, interest from bonds and private notes, and royalties from intellectual property. The moment your passive income from these columns surpasses your monthly expenses, boom, you have officially escaped the rat race. You stop working for money, and your money finally starts working for you. But building this takes real effort, and it requires breaking away from the herd. The Japanese highlight 3 powers: the sword, which represents weapons, the jewel, representing money, and the mirror, representing self-knowledge. Now, the mirror is considered the most critical power. Why? Because true self-knowledge allows you to access your inner genius. It gives you the raw courage to look inward for truth rather than blindly following popular fear-based dogma like play it safe or just get a secure job.
Remember when young Kiyosaki was working for absolutely free? Well, by using his mirror and thinking differently, he noticed the store distributor was just throwing away old comic books. He identified a hidden opportunity. He took those discarded comics, these totally dead resources, and hired someone to manage a reading room down in a basement. Suddenly, he was earning $9.50 a week without even being physically present. He learned the pure essence of making money out of thin air by turning a discarded, dead item into a cash-flowing asset. And this brilliantly illustrates our final core concept. Think of the classic story of Brer Rabbit. True financial freedom is found only when you jump directly into the briar patch. For an investor, the briar patch means confronting your own internal weaknesses, your deep-seated fears, and your greed. You find true freedom when you actively choose rational, strategic thoughts over those knee-jerk emotional reactions to financial pressure. Look, you don't have to be a genius to build wealth. You really just have to change your psychological architecture and firmly commit to acquiring assets. So I'm going to leave you with this provocative thought to chew on as you step back into the real world. Take a look around your life. Your skills, your network, what dead resources around you can you turn into a cash-flowing asset today? Figure that out, and the door out of the rat race unlocks.